"Dad, I'm thinking of getting married." Suddenly, my son, Matthew, said this. It was a truly ordinary Sunday morning. I was eagerly waiting for the French toast my wife, Linda, specially makes on Sundays while skimming through the newspaper. Matthew is Linda's son from a previous relationship, and we are not related by blood. For your information, this is my first marriage, not a remarriage, and I married Linda, who already had a child. At that time, Linda had already given birth to Matthew. Her previous husband had an affair while Linda was pregnant and never returned after the birth. Matthew grew up without knowing his biological father. I've explained our lack of a blood relationship to Matthew several times since he was old enough to understand. After each talk, I would always hug him tightly and assure him, "You are my son." Matthew considers me his real father, and I think of him as my true son. Linda and I never had children of our own. Such things are beyond our control, and there's nothing we could do about it. Linda seemed worried about it and once suggested, "Should we try fertility treatments?" with a troubled look. I responded that it was unnecessary to put her body through such treatments when we already had a wonderful son. It was my heartfelt truth. So, the word marriage uttered suddenly by my precious only son turned a peaceful Sunday morning into a state of panic. "What? Did you just say marriage? Are you talking about getting married?" I lifted my eyes from the newspaper and looked at Matthew, who nodded back with a serious expression. His eyes reflected a firm resolution. "I've been in a long-term relationship. I wanted to introduce her to you both earlier," he said, explaining how it was difficult to find the right opportunity. "As a father, I have to fully embrace my son's momentous decision. Can you tell me a little about her? It would be quite unsettling for both your mom and me to meet her without any information. There's no point in trying to fix it. I will tell my son my honest feelings." Matthew then began to talk hesitantly about the woman he was considering marrying. "Her name is Stephanie. She recently started working as a curator at a science museum. Matthew, an architect, met her by chance at a drinking party. Next weekend, I plan to bring her home. Are you two available?" Linda and I exchanged glances. We thought this would progress more slowly, but it seemed the couple had a different pace. There might be some urgent reason we don't know about. "I'm okay with it. What about you, Linda?" When I asked Linda, she replied, "Of course, it's fine." Her slightly complex smile suggested the mixed emotions of a mother about to see her precious son start his own journey. I may not understand a mother's feelings, but I decided to firmly support Linda. As the weekend approached, our house gradually became more restless and excited. Even Matthew seemed unsettled. Linda was busy with cleaning, tending the flower beds, and planning the dinner menu for that day. I was the only one with nothing to do. So, I decided to immerse myself in work. I'm a curator at a botanical garden. My job involves more than people think, like walking around the vast garden, planning events, and writing lectures. Come to think of it, Matthew's girlfriend is also a curator. Having a common profession will surely provide a good conversation starter. Above all, I'm looking forward to learning what her specialty is. "Tom, what should we do with this document? It says to keep it for 10 years, but it seems like it's about time to deal with it." A staff member, cleaning up a pile of old documents in the corner of the lab, calls out while covered in dust. "It looks like it includes a thesis, partially written though. Was Zoe Brown previously enrolled here?" I'm instantly pulled back into the past by that familiar name. Zoe was my ex-girlfriend. She was 5 years older than me, beautiful and brilliant, yet modest, and being around her was incredibly soothing. I was drawn to every aspect of her. I remember falling for her with all my heart and soul. During my college years, I spent a summer interning at this botanical garden. Back then, I was a student still unsure about my future path. I joined the internship because I was invited by my girlfriend at the time, whom I had been dating since our freshman year in college. We had a harmonious relationship without any fights. Zoe, who was leading our guidance, taught us about the work in the botanical garden and the curator's expertise, both gently and strictly. She would patiently explain things in detail until we understood them. Yet, she never spoon-fed us, allowing us to think for ourselves. She posed problems and gave us ample time to ponder over them. I think she was trying to convey the beauty of the botanical garden and the pros and cons of being a curator to us accurately. At the end of the summer, on the day of the last fireworks festival, I broke up with my girlfriend. I remember her trembling shoulders in her summer dress. She seemed to have had a vague idea about my feelings for Zoe. When she tearfully said she had been afraid of this moment, I truly felt pained. I really felt sorry for her. But still, I couldn't forget Zoe. She was already a working adult, and I was still a student. I hadn't even decided where to work yet. All I, still immature, could do for Zoe was to make a straightforward move. After frequent visits to the botanical garden and slowly closing the distance, I finally managed to go out for a meal with her around the end of the year, close to New Year's. I didn't ask her out for Christmas because I was afraid of being rejected. When I bluntly confessed, "I've fallen for you," she blushed, touched, and smiled, saying, "Thank you." But thank you wasn't an answer. So, I said again, "I want to date you." Zoe nodded quietly. Surprised, I pinched my cheek reflexively. Feeling the pain, I finally realized it wasn't a dream. Back to the present, in front of my usual computer screen. She left the botanical garden before finishing that thesis. She was a very dedicated researcher, so everyone felt sad about her departure at that time, the staff member remarked. I received the unfinished thesis of Zoe from the staff member. Come to think of it, even when we were dating, I always called her Zoe. I couldn't dare to call her by her first name only. With a flood of memories, I quietly filed the old thesis in my desk drawer. If I keep reminiscing, I might even recall the bitter memories of when she left me. I'll take care of this one. For the other documents due for disposal after 10 years, please load them onto the back of the pickup truck in the back tomorrow for transport to the cleaning plant, I instructed. After giving the directions, I turned my attention back to the computer. I noticed in the dark screen's reflection that my face resembled the one I had when Zoe left me. The happiness of our time together makes the shock of our breakup still linger. Probably, my wife, Linda, knows it too. That there's always someone unforgettable living in my heart. And I think her not touching upon it is a sign of her wisdom. My feelings of affection for the modest and earnest Linda are genuine, not a lie. I also want my son, Matthew, to marry someone he truly loves. From the bottom of my heart, I hope he doesn't become a disingenuous man like me, harboring feelings for someone other than his wife. The day finally arrived when Matthew was to bring his girlfriend home. In the morning, Linda and I were flustered, not knowing what to wear. I thought it was over the top to greet them in a suit. Seeing our panic, Matthew, the person of the hour, couldn't help but laugh at us. They said they wanted to see a normal family, so I'd like them to welcome me without being too pretentious. Matthew said that and laughed as he went out to greet her at the entrance. From Matthew's words, I immediately thought that her family environment was a little less fortunate. A few minutes later, I heard Matthew returning from the station where he had gone to pick her up. Linda and I exchanged glances, reminding each other to stay calm as we took a deep breath. When the living room door opened, I was so nervous that I almost jumped up, holding hands with Linda. In contrast to her tension, the young couple entered the living room with bright smiles. As she followed Matthew into the room, my breath caught at the sight of Stephanie. Stephanie resembled Zoe, the unforgettable woman who still occupied a place in my heart. Nice to meet you. I'm Stephanie. I'm dating Matthew. Sorry for the late introduction. She greeted us briskly in a clear, well-pitched voice. She was like a gentle breeze in early summer. That was the impression she gave. "Hey, pay attention. Stephanie is greeting us and you're just zoning out. Sorry about that, we've been nervous all morning." Linda nudged me in the ribs as I stood frozen. That jolt finally snapped me back to reality. I'm so nervous too. My heart is beating so fast, it feels like it's going to leap right out of my mouth, Stephanie said, trying to lighten the mood with a bright laugh. Looking at her profile, I felt reassured. I was greatly relieved to realize that the woman in front of me wasn't Zoe. Zoe never laughed out loud. She only smiled quietly. Having heard she was a curator, and recently coming across one of Zoe's papers by chance, my memories must have been drawn back to the past for a moment. I had to remind myself that I was unfairly superimposing Zoe onto Stephanie. We all sat on the sofa, facing each other, and enjoyed the honey peach jelly Stephanie brought as a gift. The jelly, subtly sweet and refreshing, seemed to embody Stephanie herself. "Mom, Dad, we're seriously considering marriage. I've already proposed to her, and she said yes. All we need now is your blessing," Matthew said earnestly. Seeing the grown-up look on his face made me feel a bit sad. Stephanie also said, "Please, I ask for your approval." Linda and I exchanged smiles. We had often talked about this day coming. And now, it had become a reality. Linda gave me a look. I nodded quietly. This is the woman Matthew chose. There is no way I could object. He is still hopeless and unreliable, but please take good care of our only son, Matthew. Linda, who was sitting next to me, seemed to be moved to tears. I nearly teared up myself. The young couple held hands, smiling happily at each other. It was a profound reminder of how families grow. "Have you properly greeted Stephanie's parents?" Linda suddenly asked, looking up. Matthew's expression clouded over slightly as he shook his head. "Even if we bless their marriage, it would be a problem if Stephanie's parents were to oppose it." "Why didn't you greet them earlier? Go and greet them right now." It was Stephanie who stopped me as I raised my voice. She gently placed her hand on Matthew's shoulder, giving him a reassuring look. Then she slowly began to speak. "Matthew did come to greet us properly. Although we couldn't meet face to face, he promised to make me happy in front of my parents' graves. Seeing that, I decided to marry him. It seems her parents had already passed away. I wish she had told me such important information earlier. Matthew sometimes omits crucial details. I'm sorry, I didn't know. I didn't mean to bring up such sad memories." Stephanie shook her head at my words. Then she smiled, saying, "It's all in the past now." Her resilience is indeed admirable. I smiled at Matthew, thinking he had chosen a fine woman. Hope is not rude to ask this, but you don't have to answer if you think it is. Still, if you don't mind, could you tell me what attracted you to Matthew? To change the subject from her parents, Linda spoke up. Stephanie looked at Matthew, smiled slightly, and replied, "His awkwardness, earnestness, kindness, it was how he made me feel like I had to be by his side. He gave my life a sense of purpose." Her words made me feel a sense of déjà vu. And for a moment, everything in front of me turned white. I never expected to hear the same phrase on this day. My hand holding the glass started to tremble. Matthew, oblivious and in high spirits, didn't notice my change. Somehow, I managed to maintain my dignity as a father. "You're getting too emotional. Don't grip the glass too hard, or you'll break it." At that moment, Linda gently placed both her hands on mine, taking the glass from me. She peered into my eyes and signaled, "It's okay. People say you should marry someone who loves you more, but I think women's true feelings are different." I felt the same way. As she quietly placed the glass on the table, Linda gently started. "What do you mean?" Stephanie looked a bit anxious, as if she had said something wrong. I felt the same. I thought I had to be by his side. I wanted to be close to him, especially since he had just broken up with his lover. Linda said this, looking straight at Stephanie. I remembered how Linda and I started dating right after I broke up with Zoe. Initially, I found Linda's eager advances annoying. But gradually, I came to accept her presence as a natural part of my life. One of the reasons I decided to marry her was how quickly young Matthew warmed up to me. I was puzzled why Linda brought up this old story. This guy was still hung up on his ex and didn't give me the time of day at first. I responded with a wry smile to her jokingly resentful tone. The woman who left him said the same thing. He needs me by his side. Linda's eyes were serious. Matthew laughed it off, saying, "Oh, really?" Beside him, Stephanie's expression grew tense. Then, biting her lip briefly, she spoke as if making up her mind. "Linda, do you have reservations about me marrying into this family because I am Zoe Smith's daughter?" Her voice was calm, without a trace of anger or despair. I didn't realize it at first when we met, but after seeing my husband's reaction, I understood. "You are the daughter of my love rival." Linda said this with a wistful smile and a sigh. A cold sweat ran down my back. All of this was due to my lingering feelings. Sorry, I'm the only one who can't seem to keep up. Is Stephanie the daughter of your ex-girlfriend? Matthew, feeling left out, asked for clarification about the situation. All eyes turned to me. "Stephanie is Zoe's daughter, right?" I asked, seeking confirmation, and Stephanie nodded slightly. Then, she revealed the truth that she had known about me for a while. "I wanted to know why my mother married that worthless man and why she left you. I visited the botanical gardens several times, relying on the only photo she had of you. That's when she happened to run into Matthew by chance at a drinking party. I was truly surprised when I found out Matthew was your son. He's kind, earnest, and sincere. I imagine you must have the same character traits as a father." I listened to Stephanie's words somewhat absently. The reality hadn't sunk in yet. The woman in front of me, still occupying a place in my heart, is Zoe's daughter and about to marry my dear son. Zoe, the woman who chose another man over me. The humiliating past I couldn't forget came flooding back vividly. Yes, that day was supposed to be our one-year anniversary. Our relationship seemed smooth. Everyone around us blessed and acknowledged our relationship. But on that day, Zoe broke up with me. I had believed our relationship was going well. Was I the only one who thought so? Around 6 months into our relationship, I started to notice the shadow of another man around Zoe. I trusted Zoe and couldn't imagine her lying to me. To me, Zoe was like a goddess, pure and kind. I devoted everything to loving and cherishing Zoe. "Tom, there's something important I need to discuss." I remember my heart pounding when she started the conversation with a serious expression. It was the first time Zoe ever initiated such a conversation. "What's wrong? All of a sudden, you look so serious." I tried to lighten the mood with a joke, forcing a cheerful tone. But Zoe's serious expression didn't change. "I'm going to go with him." Zoe's words were succinct. Him was the man who had been lurking in Zoe's shadow. Though I pretended not to know, I had secretly investigated the man. The him Zoe referred to was her cousin. He was an outlier from Zoe's family of scholars, doctors, and civil servants. 3 years younger than Zoe, he was unemployed. He earned a living from gambling or working as a bouncer in the nightlife district, rough around the edges in my eyes. Completely unsuitable for a goddess like Zoe. He was a man tainted by the vulgar world. That person is. "I knew you were looking into it, Tom. I'm sorry for making you feel anxious." Zoe apologized without blaming me, acknowledging her fault. "Why? If there's something wrong with me, I'll fix it. We never had any problems till today. We were going to be together forever. I really cherish you, Zoe, truly." For a lifetime. I couldn't finish my sentence as tears started to fall. Zoe just stared at me. It was the first time I saw such an unreadable expression on her face. I didn't want to believe that there was a side of her I didn't know, so I looked away. Tom, you haven't done anything wrong. I understand that you cherish and love me. You're reliable and have a vision for the future. A commendable person. You'll definitely become a good citizen. But he needs me by his side. The person who needs me the most in this world isn't you. It's him. Zoe's unexpected words hit me like a blunt force to the head. Despite my love reaching her, and despite a future where I could lead a decent life being visible, why did Zoe? Wait, I need Zoe too. I want her to be by my side always, to be happy with me, always smile with me. I pleaded desperately. Zoe sighed softly. Is that the kind of person you want me to be, Tom? I'm a person with flesh and blood. I'm not just someone who smiles kindly. Zoe's words made me freeze and unable to move. Because I thought I had been fooled. She turned her back on me, saying goodbye. I watched blankly as her long, soft hair swayed on her small back, getting further away. That was the last of me and Zoe. My father was a worthless man. He never held a steady job and was obsessed with gambling. It was my mother who supported our life. I've always thought that I would never marry a man like him. Lost in these memories, I was jolted back to reality by Stephanie's words. It seemed the man indeed lived a terrible life. Then Stephanie began to slowly talk about her parents' final days. Her parents passed away when she was in middle school. By then, Zoe was hospitalized, deteriorating in health, while Stephanie was busy with school-approved part-time jobs. Her father, as usual, gambled the money he made as a bouncer, leading a life of ups and downs. One day, Stephanie went to visit her mother in the hospital and realized her father was already inside. Feeling awkward about facing her parents together, she ended up eavesdropping outside the door. My mother said she loved my father. She was sad to leave him first, saying so as she gently stroked his bowed head, like comforting a child. Stephanie recounted. There was an atmosphere between them that even their own daughter, Stephanie, couldn't intrude upon. Stephanie left without entering the room. The incident happened that night. In the middle of the night, her cell phone alarm jolted her awake. She glanced at the time. It was just past 2 a.m. The call was from the hospital, reporting that they couldn't find Zoe. They were searching inside the hospital. Stephanie hurriedly changed and was preparing to take a taxi to the hospital when her phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. Apprehensively, she answered to find it was the police station calling. In that moment, she realized everything. The police told me my parents' car had fallen into the sea. It could have been an accident, or maybe not, they were vague. But I was sure it was a double suicide. I wasn't crying because my parents were gone. I was overwhelmed with grief and despair for being left behind. I sat at the entrance, crying out loud, Stephanie said. She always felt a sense of alienation, unable to be part of her parents' world. Of course, she received their love, but she sensed a different bond between them. I don't know if it was my father who chose that path or my mother who chose to leave this world. There was no suicide note, but their hands were firmly clasped together, Stephanie revealed. Their joined hands were wrapped in a scarf that Zoe had chosen as a gift from her father. I see. Zoe met such an end. After finishing her story, Stephanie looked straight at us, the couple. To you, I might be the daughter of a hated woman, but I love Matthew. I feel I'm needed by his side. Could you please approve of our marriage? As she pleaded, her small back was trembling. Soon, Matthew sat beside her and said, I can't imagine living my life with anyone but Stephanie. Seeing the young couple plead, my wife Linda and I exchanged glances. Tears were in Linda's eyes. It must have been a mix of various emotions. I'm fine with it. I've known about the goddess in my husband's heart even before our marriage. There might be times I see her shadow in Stephanie, but that's all in the past now. Linda said this with a smile. It was the first time I saw such a compassionate, almost saintly smile. Zoe and Linda seemed to overlap faintly in my vision. Please take good care of Matthew, Stephanie. Tears filled her eyes as she looked up at our words. Matthew gently wiped her tears away with his sleeve. Surely, these two will make a good couple. A couple that truly needs and supports each other. I'm sorry, sweetheart, I was a little bit mean, Linda said. I'm happy to be married to someone I can love. You don't need to feel guilty. I love you, including the Zoe inside you. Please don't forget that, she said. Unexpectedly, these words from Linda began to melt the stubbornness and pride inside me. Despite believing that I am the superior one, that I could have made her happier. Those feelings are slowly fading away, along with Zoe's shadow. Before me is Linda, smiling like a saint. Linda, thank you for loving someone like me, I found myself saying naturally. Linda's eyes widened in surprise, and the next moment, she hugged me tightly. An incredible sense of relief enveloped me. I truly felt loved. Hey, this is our introduction. Can you guys not be lovey-dovey? Matthew, our son, said with a hint of exasperation. I grinned back at him. Your dad is loved this much by your mom. You'd better keep up, Matthew, I replied. The young couple looked at each other, surprised at first, then burst into laughter. These two are fine. I'm sure of that.